So the last 40 hours in Planet Zoo, I spent building a realistic elephant habitat, meticulously, step by step, and even the most unnecessary steps are included in today's stop motion build. It's not only the stop motion you see on screen right now, we are actually going through every single step needed to build a realistic habitat. I'm going to talk about every single step, why I was doing the things I was doing, and also how you can do something like that if you fancy doing so, if you fancy spending 40 plus hours on a single habitat, like I did. But in case you want to get inspired or you just like watching these mesmerizing type of videos, make sure to sit down, relax, grab yourself a snack or a drink, and let's enjoy today's video, because that's gonna be a huge one. I needed to cut out a lot of content, but in order to deliver this wonderful stop motion, there had a lot to be done, which I'll get into during the video. But before, we gotta have a little note from the sponsor. Because as you know, Instant Gaming is the sponsor of the channel, and you can get wonderful game keys or in-game currency, just like PlayStation and Xbox money and so on, for a very good value. You can always find good offers here, and also it has a super good customer support. If there's anything wrong, you can just chat them, and they are super quick in replying. Also, you'll get all the DLCs you want, you can pre-order games, and so on and so forth. You can always check it out with the link in my description, and search for yourself. I bet you will find something. But now, let's get back to the video, because it's gonna be a big one. We are starting obviously with the most important part of everything, and this is the foundation. Now, as I said earlier, I did a lot, and I mean that, a lot of unnecessary things that you will not be able to see later on in this build at all. Actually, there are a lot of things that don't really need to be. I mean, if you play this game, I highly recommend to play it in a different style than I do, because you could be very much quicker if you do so. But as you know, in this park over here, this is my realistic zoo, where we are building realistic habitats as far as it goes. I'll be talking more about that in a later part of this video, because I want to give you a bit of a context how realistic I want to go, because there are some folks out there who are going 10 steps further in being realistic in their builds. But then again, they mostly don't do these unnecessary steps. They build the full final result. What I want to do with this one is building really step by step how a real habitat would be built. So this is the main foundation, as you can see over here. I'm putting a little bit of a barrier in for the water. This one over here is quite necessary just for the sake of having water in as a little pond. That's the only reason why I was putting that in, so it's not really part of the foundation. But as you can see, I had the whole space and the whole idea of this habitat already in mind when I was playing. So what you need to do is you need to kind of reverse engineer your habitat. I had a very good concept in my head, and I was trying to paint out a little bit of a idea, and so I did this. I always do this, like with the terrain paint, and gave myself an idea. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to feature some of the more modern approaches on African African elephant habitats, I should say. And I looked at stuff like the zoo in Zurich. Oh my god, it's like in English, if you say zoo, and then you need to say Zurich. That doesn't work, okay? Zurich, Zurich, whatever. It's that town in Switzerland, but also Tiergarten Berlin, and some others who just recently got some modern, Amsterdam, by the way, as well, got some modern African elephant habitats. And there are some other concepts planned for other zoos, just like the zoo in Duisburg, for example, is receiving something new in the future as well. So I was getting the most ideas off of those, and I wanted to build something that is mostly featuring one specific thing, and that was an interactive path that just kind of goes into the area. And I wanted to have the whole habitat hug around that pathing area. As you can see, there is this kind of central plaza that you can go to, and from the central plaza there's going to be like a little bit of a terrace higher up, but then, as I said, I wanted to do every single step, so I was laying out the main foundations. Once I was done with the main foundations, we went into the rebar construction. So I've done that already in the past, but mostly for the for the aquatic builds. But in this build over here, obviously we are not using proper stones. Like, in those zoos you always have very nice looking stone areas, but it would be dramatic to have like proper stones. First of all, getting them there, they're actually quite expensive too, and you're not as versatile to squeeze them into every single area you want to have them. You need to find the exact boulders, and so I decided to go for a different approach, and I put these rebar pieces in again, where you have like you know, concrete filling later on, and then actually like landscape artists are coming in to basically paint your rebar and your concrete in a way, like the whole construction in a way that it looks like proper rock work, and like it's done in a very, very nice fashion. It really looks fantastic, and this is what I wanted to emulate in here. We're obviously using the in-game rocks later on, and then was also quickly building the foundations for our bridges, which again, they also have a sub kind of construction which has these iron beams, because I mean, you know, African elephants are massive, they are very heavy, so you can't go with like an easy wooden bridge or something. So at the end of the day, you need to have something very heavy and very, you know, well constructed to make sure that there's nothing happening with them going over the overpath. And so I decided to go for these metal guiders and iron beams and making sure that everything is heavy. So once that was ironed out, that was done, I went straight over to constructing the main house. Gotta say that the house, I debated a lot with myself if I wanted to make this house accessible or not. So as of speaking, there is no way to get into the house, but there are several reasons for that I'll get to. But, you know, one of the reasons was that it was kind of getting a bit complicated to lay out the path the way I envisioned that. So my initial idea was to have another path crossing over the habitat towards the house, and then joining the house from the left-hand side, what you can see on screen right now, would be the left-hand side of the roundish front, and then go inside of it on an elevated position through the house and actually exit into the right-hand side, reconnecting with the path. However, it just never looked as I wished it was, and so I completely scrapped that idea. It just made the whole habitat felt too cramped in a way, even though it is pretty spacious. It's not like a cramped area whatsoever. You'll see that in the real-time part later on. But it felt cramped in my view, and I wanted to keep it open, spacious, you know, as like a savanna is. And I didn't want to have people having the feeling it is just kind of made for the sense of, you know, having something indoors. And then I also feel like these elephants also need their privacy. So we will have some actual stables later on in the build, as the last part of our time lapse will be the stables. Then you'll see what I mean. But what I did, I left some of the you know, windows, which I would think they are like one-sided windows, to make sure the elephants are not really annoyed by the people outside, but you can still look inside and see them chilling actually in the stables. But what I did also, and that's kind of something I'm super proud of, is that they will have a very nice big indoor area of filled in with sand and so on. You saw that basically in the animation at the beginning. But yeah, to make it really, as you can tell, very realistic, I used all of my foundations and refitted them really into the position where they needed to be. As I said, in my head, I needed to completely reverse engineer the build. So I was putting the foundations in the spaces where I already assumed pieces would go, but obviously I couldn't. Well, I could. There's another way how you could do that, but hell, hear me out. I've got 2 kids. I've got a job. I want to meet my wife at least once a week, you know. And there's also that kind of thing that I like to do sports, and I already spent way too many hours in that build, okay? There's no real reason why I should have done this other than it was exciting and fun to do. But there would also be, like, I could have just used my scribble, put that on a billboard, and do the exact measurements already from my billboards. But then again, I'm not even sure if it would have withstand the test of realism, or not realism, but how the proportions work. So even if I would have done this exactly after my scribble, I guess I still would have changed things later on once the final thing is done, as I always do. Once everything is kind of built, you get an idea, and you will see also that I'm not going to finish fully this house over here. I did most of it, but once I have the idea and I'm very happy with how that turned out, I'm mostly moving on to see that the environment is getting a bit more love, to see how everything ties together and if I need to change. But as for the continuous idea of this build step by step, this is exactly the point where we need to talk about the house. Like, usually in these builds you would have the house as one of the starting points of your construction, because it will take eventually the longest, and doing all the other work inside of the house takes a whole lot of time. So this was the step where the main kind of the house, the skeleton of the main hall was done, and in my mind now everything like the pipe work and the electricity work and all the kind of backstage blah 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 in the main house would be done, and meanwhile we could change our focus to the outside area. So the next part of the video is taking care of our outside areas. In fact, we are starting with the terrace over here, like a little bit of a viewing, I don't want to say viewing tower. It's not a tower. It's just like a raised platform. Our viewing platform. Let's call it that way, because it is actually the viewing platform. It cost me a bit of a I don't know, pain is the wrong word, but I struggled a bit with the design. I'm not sure why. It's like I had some iterations with it. This is already like the third one, which I ended up with taken. But like, I wanted to have something contemporary, but then also something modern, tying in a bit of the idea of how old kind of African areas would have used more of these like wooden pillars combined with some, breeze blocks or so. I don't know, and I didn't want to make it look too modern, but frankly, as the whole habitat will be very modern, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go with this. And then it was time to move on to the proper walls that I'm using. So as I said earlier, I was just doing the foundation work, and now we are doing the wall pieces. And as I will have a cut down in the stop motion of them being delivered, I needed to build these things piece by piece, and just also as wall pieces. Usually what I would do is like I go in and build a wall and continue building the wall, adding details, blah blah blah. So in this specific case, with the whole idea of this whole build in mind, I needed to build these as elements that I can just easily copy around and then have them getting deleted step by step in the time lapse or in the stop motion later on. It's a different way of building. What I didn't think about, and this actually caused me some issues later on, and I didn't want to change it again, I made a major mistake. So, me as a player, I don't care about stuff sticking into the ground if it's not visible. You can see very nicely I'm using these kind of 4 rock columns, and you will not be able to see them sticking into the ground that massively. However, when I would want to lift them up with a crane, obviously the bottom part becomes very visible simply because it's sticking into the ground. I had that issue that I could only use one specific wall piece later on that doesn't have this massive lower part, because the lower part then would actually be still sticking into the ground, way too big, way too massive, and then the whole stop motion animation wouldn't work. So I did a bit of a trick. Maybe you saw that, maybe not. If you didn't see, just go back to the beginning and have a look at the animation again. You'll spot that. But I did use a bit of a trick here to get around with it. Again, sometimes these things happen, and I had 2 ways of solving that issue. The one way was just like to find a little sneaky workaround to make it not as visible in the stop motion, or completely rebuild the whole wall pieces. And again, as I already spent way too many hours into this project, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna find a little workaround here. Because also I found like these walls are looking pretty nice indeed, so I ended up using them simply because I really, really liked how they looked. I really like this technique of making these walls is relatively old. I'm not even sure who exactly was it to, invent this technique, but I remember that Eben was the one who brought this into Koali when they were working on my Safari ride, and they improved the Safari ride. So Mike and Eben had been doing massive work with these kind of walls in the background of the Safari ride to give it a bit of a frame. And, ever since then, I've been using this technique to make these or use these pieces as these kind of type of massive walls, which really looks good, and I highly encourage you guys to do that, because they look exactly like zoos would have their walls done, with like this type of rebar, concrete, fake rock look. This is just really exactly how they would do it. And as I said, like it usually isn't real rock, because A, too expensive, B, too massive to transport. Like, again, it's another cost factor, because you need to transport all these massive rocks somewhere. They're super heavy, so you would need to have heavy vehicles with a, you know, heavy fuel load, and fuel load expensive, blah, blah, blah. As I said, but this is the point where I was using, obviously, the actual rocks in here. I was using the Tiger rocks because I felt like they are matching the best with this kind of fake rebar look. Like, you know, they could be painted, but this is also me saying, like, if there is anything coming in the future as a free update, I would love the in-game type of rocks, but make them flexicolor. I think that would be massive. Like, we do have flexicolor rocks with the faux rocks, but the faux rocks really they're fantastic for aquatic stuff, but they're not as fantastic for like actual habitats, at least in my opinion, because they have this typical aquatic look, which is a testament to what Frontier wanted to do, because they were added with the aquatic DLC. So that makes a whole lot of sense. But like, me looking a bit more into it from a very practical standpoint, I'd rather use all these in-game actual rocks. Like, they have fantastic textures in their specific themes. And again, because of the way they thought the game... By the way, little anecdote at this point. Do we all remember the fact that at some point Frontier thought it was a good idea to have the rocks actually counting towards the rock texture or like ground demand? There still is the toggle in the game that they are not adding to it. Like, the whole function is scrapped from the game because everyone was so, well, not amused with it. It's kind of funny that they still have that in that little overlay, but like, it's not a part of the game anymore. So I thought, you know, the reason why obviously this was so connected to the different types of biomes in the game was a gameplay mechanic, which doesn't exist anymore. So now we could easily get a flexicolor variant of these rocks, because hell, there's nothing to kind of keep working with the management or with the game mechanics. Just like, that would be a really cool thing to say. Also, as of recording this episode, by the way, this is where we have the introduction of the stable pieces. I forgot who exactly these were made by, so I used them from the workshop. Pretty simple. I'm just quickly explaining why. There are a couple of things I used from the workshop. If I remember, I'll put all the links in the description, so credit where credit goes. But most of the pieces these people have done, either if it's the stables or like gates or the cranes and excavators, I'm using from the workshop simply because there are people who are way more clever when it comes to these things. Like, they really know what they're doing. If I would build an excavator or a crane or anything, not only would it take a massive amount of time, because you guys know how much detail I would want to put in, but even then, this detail doesn't necessarily mean that this is a good crane from a realism standpoint. And so I'm like, you know, who am I to do it if I don't do it better, you know? So I took those from the workshop because they essentially are part of the realism. So that is also the moment where we need to talk about the rudilistic approach of the zoo. So what I mean by rudilistic is to go for a very high level of realism with your build, but still maintain a certain level of creativity, to scrap a couple of things that, like, I personally, and that's just my very own opinion, my very own look at it, don't find necessarily that important to make it a super realistic habitat. So I could have easily gone in and make all the backstage kind of water pipe systems here to feed into the water areas. I could easily make like a very big kind of, you know, cable work to the ceiling of the main hall, and I could have built a proper backstage area where the stuff enters in. All of these things I have not done in this build specifically, because I don't really have an access to the backstage area anyways, and I don't even plan to have it, so it's really not visible. And I was like, you know, this time around, let's just not do it. So these type of things, I'm like, that's my view on rudilistic. So if you do expect like a completely crazy realistic habitat, then you are really, if you really want to see that, like Caesar Creates does some good stuff, but also Haribo and Eben also has a lot of these cool things. Remnant is crazy when it comes to these things. Just basically all the people around Bro Nation in the various projects. The Twin Palm series, for example, is a ridiculous realism-focused thing, and they go above and beyond with all their realistic things, as I said. But what they don't have, and this is just maybe the point I wanted to make, is they don't go like step by step through these things like I do, because I'm stupid and my brain wanted me to do that, and I find these kind of stop motion things super mesmerizing and nice. But yeah, as you can see, we are in the detailing phase now of the habitat, and this time again, this building, this tree over here is something I'm really digging. I love that, like having the idea of a dead tree overgrown by like some like ivory it would be potentially, but like these plants over here do a great job of mimicking as if like ivory or something, not ivory, ivy, my god, ivory. Ivory is a thing that, like, you know, is connected to an African elephant habitat, obviously, but it doesn't grow on dead trees. That would definitely be a better, that would be a definitely better source for ivory. Well, anyways, ivy, I meant, that was just growing from there. So yeah, also making sure that the colors of the water and so on match up the realistic approach of that, making sure the ground looks nice, putting a couple of rocks here and there. You get it, you know, just making sure everything looks nicely clean and filled. I also looked at making sure that this whole area looks really, really slick at the end of the day. And I think it does, and playing so much in this game, so many hours in Planet Zoo again, after having spent a whole bunch of time in Planet Coaster 2, showed me how many insanely great pieces we have in this game. However, the scaling is a thing that I will say I will miss forever now. It was continuously an issue to not have scaling. It's not like that after half an hour I was like, yeah, okay, it's gone, I don't need it. Nope, I really, like, every single time I was like, oh man, it would be great to have scaling now. At least, like, you know, people have been a bit vocal about the fact why not everything is scalable down to 10% in Planet Coaster 2, but like even a level of scaling we have is enough to just fill in some gaps. You know, sometimes you have like this like 1.5 meters and there's like this tiny gap like 20 centimeters more, and you would need that. Like having the chance to just scale this down, it's just that's just exactly it. But yeah, last step in our build is something I usually don't do, and this time around I wanted to, and I'm very happy that I did. And this is the backstage stables. Like, this is the privacy area for our wonderful elephants, where they can live, where they can have a good little nap and sleep, you know, or if they're like need to separate some of them. Oh, by the way, I haven't said that even, but the whole habitat, you've seen these gates in front of the bridges. They are in to separate some like elephants from each other, because sometimes you have the necessity to, you know, separate them from each other if they show aggressive behavior towards each other, maybe because of having kids, pregnancy, or bulls don't really like how's it called, mate fights or something like that. So there is a chance to separate these animals from each other by having two separate areas of the habitat. That's an idea I had earlier to bring that in as well as part of the realism in here, and I like it. There is a couple of things don't necessarily work out perfectly. I would need to move one of the gates a little bit to have some equally big areas, but you know, for me personally, it was important to have the ability to separate areas now, over having like very much perfectly equal areas, I guess. I'm not even sure if real zoos would have it completely equal as well. Sometimes I think it's like more important to just have the ability to separate them and still maintain a certain area for them to thrive in. But yeah, as you can see, really spending a bit of time here making sure that they have their backstage area. Again, as I said, it's more about the wonderful stable pieces and not really about any food or like proper realistic food sources or water stuff and so on. I did put something in, but like, yeah, I think that's it. And at some point you gotta call it a day when you spend already like so many hours in the build. And again, as I said, I want to do other stuff as well, but I'm mega happy. You'll see that in a couple of seconds when we go over to the real-time part. This habitat, really, I thoroughly enjoy that. I think it looks fantastic. From the sheer looks of it, it definitely is one of my best habitats I've ever done in this game. And it's a bit surprising, I may add, because I have not expected that being the case after being for so long in Planet Coaster 2 now. I just really think this shows just like how the muscle memory in a game like that can kick in. And obviously, if you have inspiration like I had, it just really shows. And yeah, as I said, I'm really happy. Also, I did close off some of the windows to not make it too open for the elephants. Too many people looking. As you can see, a whole bunch of people storming here already to annoy the elephants who are just trying to get to sleep. That's kind of how I feel like a dad of a 6-week-old boy. You know, making fun of me when I want to get some sleep. Anyways, let's move over in the real-time part, I guess. So here we are at the entrance of the elephant area, and specifically I wanted to have this lowered down look inside of this area, so that you definitely need to go inside of this. So you will potentially see the elephants moving up here. This is one of the ideas, and there will clearly be viewing from over here and also in the back there, but I wanted to make sure that you will have to get this full experience only when you go in. So what you got to do, you go through here, through that little tunnel, and again, potentially you will already witness some. Jesus, my English is not Englishing today; it's Germaning. What's going on? And then you have this wonderful area down here, maybe even hearing and listening to the noises of the elephants, but also they don't really see you, which again is another idea to grant them privacy. But it will spark your inspiration to just, you know, make sure that you see them. But you will eventually see them because they can really get up close here and have a look inside of that. So we're turning around a little bit the idea of who's looking at who, you know, which I think is always a fun thing to do. There's an autosave going on. But yeah, so if we turn around the camera, also this park is very heavy, even with my crazy machine. I'm not sure for how long I can maintain this park in action, because the realistic habitats seem to cause a really big issue with the lag in this game. Also because of some of the crazy things I tried in here with the navigatable areas. But yeah, moving up in here, you get your first wonderful view inside of the water area. So this is where the elephants can take a bath. Then you do have the scrubs down here, like some brooms thingies, you know, where they can rub themselves if they want to, give it a bit of scratchy. We also have some scratchies here in the water if they want to have a bit of a scratchy here, combined with water specifically for the summer. And then once we go higher up, which is again exactly what we're going to try. Wonder what these elephants are around, by the way. I would have loved to see them moving. Oh, there you go, just in front of us. Look at you go. Hello, my friend, how are you doing? So yeah, that is exactly the view that you know, we all came for. This is the one you can look inside of their insider habitat. So what I wanted to make sure is that you don't see their stables from here, but you do see the little bit of a waterfall kind of feature here. Look at that, lovely, even with the sound. Ah, it's so good. It is so freaking good. Look at that. This is exactly like that. That is exactly the experience I built this whole thing for. And yeah, also making sure that you're really, as you can see, you can't really tell too much from the rest of the zoo. This is where the crazy reptile house is, and this is where our realistic otter habitat is. But you can't really see that much. So it's really, you need to stay within the idea of this elephant habitat, which again, I really love. I love the idea, and you know, moving over, we should be able to catch this wonderful elephant coming around. Oh, look at the view. Just look at that. Oh, I'm loving this. Are you going for a swim? You going for a little water bath? Or are you going to have a drink here? Oh, look at that, for a little drink. Yeah, that is a good one. Get some water from over here. Gosh, this shot over here is already ridiculous. Love it. Love it. So yeah, that's that. Not sure if some of the other animals. Would have loved to see someone pathing over. That would have been nice. But sometimes the traversable area is also causing some issues, which, well, maybe it is. I'm not sure. Anyhow, so let's go down. Or maybe we can see this one from over here. Yes, we can. Oh my god, look at that. Look at this shot. Look at this shot, guys. Ah, I'm in awe with my own habitat. Is that okay for you? I hope it is, because it's definitely okay for me. Look at that. It's getting half wet. I thought initially that this was really always up until the level that they are standing in water, but it seems like that there is like a detect going on as soon as you hit the water. It's like half soaked in water, or entirely if they're deep enough in. Oh my god, look at you go down. Ooh, really love that. Ooh. What are you doing? Did I open something in the background? I did. Oh my god. I was wondering why I couldn't really move over. Oh my god, that looks so good. Look at you in the water. Gosh, this is so good. I could stand here forever now. Did I open again? Can you just not do that, please? Oh my god, why did this just happen? Let's go back into the explore mode. And then let's see. There you go. There you go. Oh. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, in the meantime, did someone try to go over. No, that don't really go. Okay, never mind. Let's go and have a look for the rest of this area. Just gonna storm through here and all the way back. It's a bit of a narrow path again. Maybe you see something happening over here, and then you come off here and you are greeted on the left hand side with another wonderful view. It's kind of separated, you know. You can see on one side into the stables, which is exactly here. Is there someone in one? No, not really. And then on this hand side, you can even see a bit of their inside area that you can't see from the outside. Again, this is exactly the idea. Look at how much space they have in here with that central open space, which again is also would feature some rain. There's like a little bit of a water pond in there. You know, we're just gonna sneak in here real quick. So you can see there are some of the elephants getting some food. But if we continue moving, you see that there is like a little water pond here. Just the idea, you know, having that open. And then theoretically, you could close these things off. Like there's an idea that over here you can sweep around a little gate if needed. But yeah, overall, I'm very, very happy. I mean, just imagine this game having the same lighting as Planet Coaster 2. Gosh, how insanely amazing that would look. It still looks decent, you know, but having the engine now in Planet Coaster 2, seeing how interiors could look like, this is like looking really a bit dull, despite the fact it looks good, but it's nowhere near how it would realistically look, you know. The shadows and so on, they're not as crisp as, you know, as focused as they should be. But that's not my point. My point is that the outside looks fantastic. Are we on the roof right now? Okay, hell, we're just gonna use this moment to stand on the roof and have a look at the habitat from this angle. Well, that's an angle I didn't even expect I'm gonna show you, but if the Explore Cam kind of decides to give that to us. Look, there's the elephant, there are the guests, this is the rest of the zoo. Yeah, oh gosh, I'm really a fan of it. I'm really a fan of it. Okay, never mind. Still, let's move into the free look camera so we can actually have a look how the whole thing looks from above. And oh my god, I am really, really, really happy. I am really happy. As I said, I've not been that happy with the habitat in such a long time. I do think it looks wonderful. I do think it captivated exactly what I wanted to do. I think it fits super well in the zoo in that space. Just really fills that in. Gotta admit that my initial idea of this zoo, which wasn't really an idea, but like the zoo starts to feel super, super, super realistic. Yeah, there's really not that much I can say. I'm just really happy how it turned out. Look at that one going for a mud bath over here. This is also like a little trick, by the way. There is this mud bath hidden in here. Not only that it looks kind of cool, having this mud in the ground, in the water. If you put water over, obviously you need to have free build for that. But it does look really, really, really thick if you do that. It just really looks cool. Because then it gets this real mud bath kind of appeal, rather than just having that, yeah, with the edges and so on. So I just don't like that much. I'm wondering if you can sneak that in without mods even, but I don't know. Yeah, it just looks fantastic. Just, yeah. There's not really that much more to say. Overall, I am absolutely happy with this build. You guys let me know in the comments what you think about this build. Are you enjoying it? Do you have feedback on it? Whatever. How you like the stop motion. Yeah, I certainly had a lot of fun. Building this thing. It was really a hard project and I loved it. So hopefully you did too. And as always, if you liked it, make sure to like the video, leave a comment. That would be helping me to feed the algorithm as always. And also, yeah, if you want to send that over to someone else who you think could enjoy that, please do so. Again, watching, sharing these videos helps me the most on the channel. You don't need to pay anything or whatever, but you know, the currency I need is your engagement to make the video go into that weird algorithm. So yeah, guess that's that. Have a wonderful time. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to show you more of what I've been cooking in the background. So wait for that. Have a good time, and bye.